We're talking about first impressions before. First impressions are really important. A lot of people will never get over their first impression of a select individual. I would tell you about my current wife and me, but I don't know if that would give you any information. She when she first came in, I was really mean to her. I was a four-striper, and she was a baby lieutenant, and I treated her kind of bad. And she thought I was clever, and she still thinks I'm clever. So I don't know if one thing follows the other. I don't know if she ever decided that maybe I wasn't the person she should have married. But she just wrote me a note on my Valentine's present, which is right here. This is my Valentine's present. Anyway, it's my Valentine's present. She wrote me a note and said, if I was married to somebody else, I would punch them in the face and go find you. That's what she said, which is kind of a sweet, sweet thing to say if you think about it. Kind of a mean thing for the other guy, but she could have made a lot of mistakes. She could have made a mistake. She could have married somebody she didn't like. She could have married somebody, her mother, they were from the South, so they had that whole thing going for them, that whole Southern thing where you marry the right person. You marry into the right family, that kind of thing. If she had followed that precept, then I wouldn't have been the person that she married. For one thing, I'm from the North, not from the South. Another thing, I was an enlisted person. She was an officer. It was against the law for us to get married. It was literally against the law for us to get married. Article 37, UCMJ, no fraternization. Anyway, but we got married anyway. And I think she's been happy. I'm not sure. It's hard for me to say. I don't know what she expected. Anyway, so we can use our first impressions and nonverbal communication to our advantage. In public speaking, we can make a strong opening. That will sack the rest of your talk. You don't have to worry about it after that. Job interviews, the way that you dress, of course, you're trying to make an impression on the individual. That's what you need to think about. This is a person you've never met before, and here you are. You're going in for an interview, so you need to look good. You need to probably dress better than you could have. You need to make eye contact, especially if this is a white person. You need to make eye contact with them, and you need to have a positive body posture. A positive body posture that tells them that you are strong and that you are a good worker, but not one that you don't want to look subordinate. I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a second. Your handshake quality, this can have a lot to do with your personality and final hiring recommendations. Your handshake should be firm but not too firm. You shouldn't have a squeezing contest with the other individual. Interesting situation. I interviewed Sue. Sue was I was on the committee that hired Sue, and when she shook hands with me, I'll show you here. Shook hands. This is what she did. Like that. She went like that. I know, and I thought that was way too intimate for somebody that I had just met. Why in the world is she doing that? Why is she? It just gave me the whim-whims. It really did, and I told her, when we were talking about whether to hire her or not, I said I don't like that. I don't think that was a good idea. It was a little bit too pushy. It was a little bit too intimate for me. I didn't think she just met me, and there's no reason why she should grab my hand with both hands. It's also a sign of dominance. The double-handed handshake is a sign of dominance, and of course she certainly. I don't know how she shook hands with Sarah, because Sarah didn't even notice. Sarah's a cognitive psychologist. She's not a social psychologist, so she doesn't recognize any of these things. Anyway, so we had a long conversation. We hired her anyway. Now she's done a couple strange things, and I think it had to do with that double handshake she had. Anyway, it was probably not a very good idea. Certainly not a very good idea to do that to a social psychologist. First impressions in nonverbal communication, work done by Carvey, Cuddy, and Yap. This is Dana Carvey. Dana Carvey used to be on Saturday Night Live. He's a comedian. He's been in several movies, but he has no formal training in this. But he brought an idea to Cuddy and Yap, and the three of them got together and they put together this. They put together a paper about the way that people sit, the way that people stand, and dominance. The paper showed that merely by standing in a high power pose, an individual can raise their testosterone level and feel more confident. In other words, just by the way that you stand, it can make you feel better about yourself. It can raise your testosterone level. Testosterone level specifically in males, not specifically in females.
Is it very small though?
What?
The testosterone. I can't say testosterone.
Testosterone? Now you got me not being able to say it. It raises it enough that it makes you feel better about yourself. If you look at some of the videos about Vladimir Putin, Putin's always standing in a positive pose. And that was one of the interesting things about Helsinki. I don't know if you remember Helsinki. It was a couple summers ago. Putin and Trump got together, and they had a conference. And afterwards, Putin and Trump were standing there. And part of the reason that people were so pissed off at Trump was one thing he seemed to give away everything. He didn't blame Putin for anything. And the other was that he was standing in a subordinate position. I'll show you how he was standing in just a second, but Putin was standing there in a dominant position. And Trump allowed him to do that, which is a little weird. These are the high power poses. With your hands on your hips, with your feet apart, so that if somebody hits you, they're not going to knock you off your feet. The other one is leaning toward people and putting your hands on the table. That's another power pose, high power pose. And these are all quite important, especially for world leaders. And this is what Putin was doing. This is how he was standing. He was standing there with his papers, and then when he started talking, he put his hands on the podium, which was a high power pose. And wait a minute, let me show you what. This is pretty much what Trump was doing. Yeah. So everybody was pissed. I mean, the FBI's upset because, well, for one thing, they said that Putin interfered with the election, and he said that he believed Putin and he didn't.
What's with the sandals?
I know.
For women, so for men it's the testosterone, and then for women is it serotonin that raises? Or?
No, it's actually testosterone as well.
Really?
Yeah.
For women?
Yeah.
So you feel a little bit more masculine? than women?
Yeah, but you have to remember testosterone is the substance in your hypothalamus that gives you your sex drive.
Okay.
So it raises, yeah, okay.
Excuse me, I have to go.
Okay. You can watch the movie.
I can watch the movie.
Yeah.
On TV?
Yeah.
Okay, can I still sign in though?
I'm not going to
Or-
take attendance today.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
I hope everything's okay.
Okay. That's my daughter.
Okay.
She wasn't feeling well. So
Okay.
just got to go back to her.
Well, good luck.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyway, low power poses and high power poses. As you can see, anytime you're covering yourself up, you're trying to protect yourself. Yeah. Yeah, you need to stand with your, well, yeah. If you've ever watched Big Bang, there's an episode where they
Like
talk
I see
about
this very common, like around here, like people just When
Sure.
they're doing presentations,
What they're doing is they're closing themselves off.
yeah, they go like that, and it just throws me off. I don't want to,
Yeah,
like, they're not interested in talking.
exactly. What they need to do, whoops, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. What they need to do is that.
Yeah, that's what I usually do.
Yeah, or, and putting your, well, these are all both high power poses as well.
Oh,
So if
just
you-
one, not
yeah.
two?
Well, you can put both hands in your pockets if you want. It means that you're so self-assured that you're not even trying to defend yourself because nobody can beat you. See, you got both hands in your pockets. So if somebody attacks you, this is really weird because it has to do with physical assault. See, I'm not afraid of you right now because I got both hands in my pocket. So if you start running at me,
You're not scared.
I'm not scared. I got my feet apart. Yeah. So it has to do with those types of gestures, and Putin's really good at this. Putin, I saw a video over the weekend about he got thrown in a judo match. He got rolled in a judo match by a lady. And he's always doing all these macho things, riding horses and fishing and hunting and whatnot. He plays hockey, he plays, he does judo. Anyway, he's always in these power poses where he's got his feet wide apart. He's not a very tall guy, he's about my height, I guess. But he's always in these power poses. You never see Putin when he's not in a power pose. And of course, he's ex-KGB, so he knows all these things. He's very much aware of it. So these are low power poses, and these are high power poses. Those right there are the high power poses. There we go. Yeah. The other thing is they don't really look you directly in the eye. They're always the other. Attribution theory is a theory that tries to explain others' behavior. Attribution tends to be attributed either to external causes or internal causes. For example, researchers have discovered that men are more likely to attribute a woman's friendliness to mild sexual interest. Men are deluded. It's their way of being positive about themselves. This is known as misattribution, of course, the fact that men always think that all women are attracted to them. This particular misattribution may be one of the main contributing factors to male behavior that women consider sexual harassment or rape. And this is getting really interesting out there because the APA has come out with something called toxic masculinity, and this is where this is a constant as far as they're concerned. Now, some men are so attractive, so tall, so muscular, so handsome that these individuals can do just about anything and get away with it.
They just use that and
And they think that everybody gets away with the same thing because women just don't blame them for anything. Women are always coming on to them, and it's always real.
for mine, I have an incident with that, like here on campus, where I was trying to network with people, especially some of the men here, and
They thought you were
kinda-
attracted to them.
Yeah, so they started asking me like certain things, like what's your phone number, and I was just like, whoa, like,
What's your sign?
well, what's your clan? Like, I always establish that clan first, and if they're not related to me, I would still call them like a brother or big brother or something, just so that there's that boundary.
Right.
And then I always like have to indicate, oh, my husband, he's waiting for me, I gotta go. And it's just so funny how, and I'm not even having any interest, I was just being a friendly to network with people
Right.
as a peer mentor.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
yeah. It's-
We can't help ourselves. There's something wrong with us. We think all women are attracted to us. I got over that delusion about 20 years ago. So, and I can remember the day that it happened. I was on an airplane, and usually I'm thinking to myself, "Oh, she's paying attention to me. Maybe she's attracted to me." Those kinds of things. And one day I realized, God, I'm so old and ugly. Nobody's that doesn't happen anymore.
I think during those trainings for sexual harassment,
Mhm.
they have those trainings, this should be thrown in there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you should mention it.
Yeah,
Yeah. That men have this problem.
yeah.
And it's not a problem, it's self-assurance is what it is. It's not really a problem, but it can be a problem. Why don't you square it up? You don't have to take it from the side. Males universally tend to be more sexually assertive than women are. This may be one reason why 23% of women say that they have been forced into unwanted sex, while only 3% of men admit to forcing women into unwanted sex acts. Men think that they're seducing women. They're forcing them to have sex with them. Whereas the women think that they're being forced or being coerced into sex. And it's a toss-up. Remember, you've got two people that are thinking one thing before it happens, and after it happens. Now, if he has a lot of self-assurance, then he's assuming that she really wants to have sex with him. If we watch old movies from the 90s, even the 2000s, yes still doesn't mean, or no doesn't mean no. Sometimes it means yes, especially with attractive men. Attractive men assume that women always want to have sex with them. As confusing as that sounds like confusing. But they think that they're so attractive that all women want to have sex with them.
And that's where the women is either that fight or freeze concept comes in.
Fight or flee? Kinda, well, we keep having these conversations about what is rape and when does it become rape and at what point is he coercing her into doing so. And sometimes it changes right in the middle. Sometimes she may have sex with somebody that she normally wouldn't want to have sex with, and it seemed like consensual. Well, and that's one of the reasons why we keep seeing these arguments. She's saying that she was coerced into sex, and he was saying no, it was consensual. There's an argument going on right now in Virginia, with the lieutenant governor. Two women have come forward and said that he coerced them into having sex, or one of them said he raped her, and he said no, it was both consensual. So there's a fine line here, and I don't know what the answer is. As a male, I'm just as confused as everybody else is. The water is coming down over here, so I think I got you. Yes, almost full. As much fun as that.
Can take it home.
Yeah, take it on that. Water my plants with. Anyway, yeah, and I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. And as a male, I'm probably more confused today than I was 3 or 4 years ago. Things were different. We've got Harvey Weinberg who's being charged with rape. We've got Donald Trump saying what he did before the last election in that Hollywood tape. We've got Donald Trump paying women not to say anything who he theoretically had sex with. I know. And this is really quite confusing now. And and older men, the rules were different back in the old days. They were different when I was young than they are today. So this is something that you guys are going to have to figure out. Way beyond any of this stuff. So I don't have to worry about it. As long as I've still got a wife, I guess I'm okay. Yeah, but this is and maybe this slide is inaccurate. Maybe, well, the 23% or 3%, that's real, but I mean, the male understanding of what's going on has changed, or is changing. Hopefully it's changing for the better, but possibly not. But we've always got those really attractive men that can have sex with anybody that they want. And of course, the rules for them is not the same as the rules for everybody else. And that changes everything. But we do have that concept of toxic masculinity, where males think that they're in charge. The Bible says that they're supposed to be in charge. The Quran says that they're supposed to be in charge. Most of the Hindu writings say that men are in charge and women are subordinate. But so all of this is changing, and will change over time. And you guys are going to have to figure this out. You've got the same thing in your culture. Aren't men supposed to be the ones ruling the house, not ruling the house, but making the decisions? Isn't that the way it is? Aren't men supposed to make the decisions? You guys run the house. You own the house. Okay, but aren't men supposed to make the decisions? What car you buy? There's an awful lot of that. Seems to be an awful lot of that out there, of male domination.
I think it's more of the men do the small decisions, like what's best, but the woman does the whole, like making sure that the future generation is safe, and like my daughter, like I make the decisions on what daycare and like
What car to buy?
no, that's my husband. That's just kind of like
That's a small decision.
that's a small decision, like
How about where you live?
that one is both of us. I could
Okay.
say it's a mutual decision.
Okay.
But my husband wants me to take the lead most of the time, but he's older than me, so, and then plus I grew up Christian, so I'm thinking that like my husband should be the one that's leading.
See,
But
Christianity
then-
screws everything.
Then my husband
I
is,
didn't say it.
my husband
Oh, I
is
did. I said that
traditional.
on tape, didn't I?
Then my husband is traditional, he's like strictly traditional, where the women are the ones to make the decision. He grew up like that. So it's, but we just kind of made that decision where we both help each other. and-
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't fit anywhere in here? No, okay. Unfortunately, the more sexually aggressive a male is, the more likely he is to misread women's communication. And of course, that's a nice way of saying that he wanted something, so he took it. Was it rape? Well, he wouldn't say so. Well, he'd say it was consensual sex. He talked her into it. He seduced her. If you watch an old movie, and I'm not suggesting that you watch James Bond, but if you watch James Bond, the early James Bond movies with Sean Connery, my goodness gracious, he was just about a rapist in most of those movies. He coerced women into having sex with him that in situations that he shouldn't have taken advantage of them, but of course he did. And all of this, like I keep saying, all of this has changed over time. The first James Bond movie was Dr. No. So if you watch Dr. No, in Dr. No, he has sex with several women, and in almost every instance, he has coerced them into something has happened so that they have to have sex with him, or he's going to turn him in or kill him or something, which isn't quite the same, is it? Fritz Heider was a Gestalt psychologist who first proposed the attribution theory in 1958. So the attribution theory hasn't been around that long. I was born in 1949. As far as I'm concerned, it hasn't been around that long. Of course, as far as you guys are concerned, it's been around since before you were born. Heider noted that when someone else does something, gets in front of you in traffic, it is because of internal reasons, because of revenge or evilness. I don't know if you drive, but it's always that way. When we do something that could be considered incorrect, we tend to attribute it to external causes. The only reason I was driving so fast is because I was late for a doctor's appointment. I know why I did something, so my causes are always external. It's not because I'm evil or because I'm bad or I'm a terrible driver. It's because of something that happened. But another individual, of course, they're a bad driver. What was happening? Oh, yesterday I was driving to Chinle, and this Ford got behind me. A little bitty Ford got behind me, and he was on my bumper, and of course, you know, the road to Chin Lee just winds all over the place. He couldn't get around me. Finally, there was an open area, and he had maybe 50 feet to get around me. So he did, but he passed me on the double line. I slowed down, but he couldn't get around me. And being a psychologist, I'm thinking, well, everything's okay. He just needs to get around me. And then this crazy thing was, as soon as he got around me, he slowed down. So I'm driving 65 miles an hour to Chin Lee. You're supposed to. That's speeding. I know it's speeding. But I could have been driving 70. He was driving 70. Okay. Anyway, he gets around me, slows down to about 60. I couldn't figure that out. He just wanted to get around me. I guess he couldn't see very well. Anyway, I'm sure he didn't do it because he's evil. Maybe he did it because, oh, I can't remember. That's me and my kids. As you can see, this is 17 years ago.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's your son? He looks just like you.
I know he does. You know, my ex-wife told me that it wasn't my kid. Bitch.
Women are evil sometimes.
I know. No, we look just alike.
Gee. Jesus. I would have said the same thing.
For real.
She was just trying to hurt.
Is he the same height as you?
No, he's about. I'm actually standing up on the curb.
Oh, okay.
And they're both down. Actually, she's standing on the curb, and he's about. I'm 5'7". He's about 5'8", 5'9". A little bit taller than that. Not a whole lot.
Oh.
And that was 17 years ago. It was a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. How old was I in 2002?
Of course, my
Doing the
daughter.
math.
My daughter's
Where
going.
was I in 2000?
My daughter's going to be 50 this year.
Really?
Yeah. That was 17 years ago. She's 33.
I was like 9 years old.
Oh, God.
Wow.
I was like,
She's
right
33 in
there.
that picture. She's 33 and he's 31. And we had just taken her down to Florida from Norfolk, Virginia.
Is that when she was with her husband, or?
She had just divorced her husband, and
Oh.
she was heading down to Florida to live.
Does not her husband, ex-husband, live in Florida?
Her ex-husband is from Cleveland, Ohio. He's Hispanic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, her husband is. But the guy that she made a baby with wasn't her husband. That was just her baby daddy. Okay, her baby daddy.
Okay, I get it now.
Okay. But she was married to another guy. I didn't know, but she had just had an abortion because she was divorcing this guy. She didn't want to have his kid, so she had just had an abortion. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that until about 10 years later. Anyway, that's why she looked so messed up. And then my son and I had just driven the truck all the way down to Florida from Norfolk, Virginia. It was a good trip. It was a fun trip. We had a good time. Well, my son and I had a good time. My daughter, not so much. We were teasing her the whole way. We didn't realize she was not feeling very well. When deciding about causes of a behavior, we can make one of two attributions. Internal dispositional attribution. We infer that a person is behaving in a certain way because of something about that person, their attitude, their character, their personality. Just like you were assuming all those Belagana were acting like assholes in Las Vegas because they're assholes. But the reality, who knows what the reality is? Who knows what's true? So you were assuming it was internal. They're just jerky people. And that may have had something to do with the way that you talked about them, seeing them all as negative. And there may have been some negative people there, but there may also have been other individuals that were just kind of standing there and you assumed that they were like the other people because they looked alike. Okay.
Well, it's more of like their expressions and body language.
Sure.
But like people who are friendly, they seem more open.
Sure.
Like I would talk with them, but I would try to say hi to like most of them. Like a lot of them are just like.
They're also city people. City people don't say hi. There's something wrong with city. But we both knew that.
Yeah.
And they're also not Navajo. I ran into the same thing yesterday at Bash's. Not that I pronounced it correctly. At Bash's, people just looked right through me. You would have thought that I wasn't there. I had one lady. I was in one of those aisles that you can. There's only like 1.5. It's only 1.5 lanes. And I was picking something off, and she just ran right into me, and I was thinking, come on, lady. I try to go around people. I try not to block anything. That's me. But she just ran right into me. And then she was looking up like she didn't even notice that I was there. And she was looking at the cake mixes. And I wasn't important enough to look at. So what I had to do in order to get out of that aisle was to back up and go around, which was okay. I do that all the time. Anyway, try to stay out of people's way. But her cake mix was far more important than whatever the hell I was looking at. Olives, I think. Olives are important.
What type of olives do you like? It whole or cut up?
Oh yeah, the whole ones. The really strange flavored ones. But they don't have a very good selection over here.
I only know the black ones.
I like black olives. But I learned to, my first wife taught me how to eat black olives. So, and oh, the strange things you do for sex, my God. I know, I didn't like black olives at all. I was trying to flirt with my first wife, so I started eating black olives. It's really kind of odd. External situational, I mean, it could have been heroin, or it could have been pot, or it could have been beer, but luckily it was just black olive. I mean, men are stupid. They'll do just about anything to get laid. And that's a, take that one to the bank.
Amen to that.
There's something wrong with that. Of course, that has to do with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, men are giving up all this stuff, and they think that they deserve something, and we can add all that into all this coercion and whatnot. It's one of the reasons, men have been planning this for months, and all of a sudden, tonight's the night, and it may not be the night for her, but it's the night for him. And so that's one of the reasons why there's such a vast difference between the women that feel like they've been coerced, the men that actually admit that they do that kind of thing.
Is it very rare that it's flipped? Like where the women...
No, it's not that rare, actually. My second wife was kind of that way. Yeah, it's not really that rare. But if it's in women, then we call it a mental illness. I know. If it's in men, we just ignore it. He thinks he's all that. That kind of stuff. The covariation model is a theory that states that a form of attribution about what caused a person's behavior. We systematically note the pattern between the presence or absence of possible causal factors and whether or not the behavior occurs.
Covariation.
So if it's good, it's Mr. Coffee. If it's bad, it's me. Oh, okay. The covariation model.
Do you have an example?
Well, that's the example.
So if it's good,
It's Mr. Coffee. If it's bad, it's me. So bad, yeah. So if the coffee doesn't taste very good, it's her fault. If the coffee tastes great, it's the coffee maker that made it. Yeah, covariation. So, yeah. Kelly assumes that when we are in the process of forming an attribution, we gather information or data. The data that we use, according to Kelly, are how persons' behavior co-varies or changes across time, place, different actors, and different targets of the behavior. By discovering covariation in people's behavior, you're able to reach a judgment about what caused their behavior. The covariation model focuses on observations of behavior across time, place, actors, and targets. It examines how the perceiver chooses either an internal or an external attribution. And so what we're talking about is, well, a good example. I hope my wife doesn't watch this. I'm an asshole when my wife drinks. So all of a sudden, even though I haven't changed my behavior at all, if my wife is drinking, then all of a sudden I'm the jerkiest guy in the whole wide world.
Do you drink?
No. So what has happened? What's the difference between me? The only difference is the alcohol. So my assumption is that I'm only a jerk when my wife is drinking. In other words,
So your wife tells you that you're a jerk while
yeah,
she's...
she.
Or do you call yourself a jerk?
No. She rips me up one side and down the other. Come on, now what happened between today and yesterday? And she says stupid things like, alcohol makes you tell the truth. Right, okay. So I'll ask you this question again tomorrow when you're sober, and we'll see how jerky I am. We'll see just what a jackass I am, what kind of a horrible person I am. So the only difference, and that's the covariation model. So when my wife drinks, that's the only change in everything. Have I changed? Has anything happened? You know, suddenly, you know, what you thought was romantic 15 years ago all of a sudden becomes, you know, something else. Me being a jerk, that doesn't make any sense. Do you see what I'm talking about? And that's an easy one because, well, we have alcohol, which changes your prefrontal cortex and the whole thing. So that is the difference. But what if all of a sudden, you know, Marius and I are buddies. What if all of a sudden he doesn't want to talk to me anymore? What has changed?
You're a professor now?
No, he didn't. What's changed? Well, it could be anything. It could be the fact that he's decided that he's going to become an operator or a roadman in the Native American church. I mean, you know, all of these things could change. Maybe he had a bad experience with people in Holbrook, or somebody in Sholo, or somebody in Snowflake. Maybe his kids are being picked on by some white kids at school. You know, a lot of things could change, and that's the covariation model. That's the idea that things can change, but it usually has to do with one factor. Now that's never happened. As a matter of fact, he called me and asked me if I would cover his class today, just in case he doesn't make it. So I said, hell no. He's studying an area of history, World War I. It's one of my areas of expertise. So that ought to be fun. I ought to have a good time. We make choices about internal versus external attributions by using three pieces of information. Consensus, the extent to which other people behave the same way toward the same stimulus as the actor does. In other words, is that the way I would react? And of course, when you were talking about what was going on in Las Vegas, I'm a Belagana, they're Belaganas. How would I act in that situation? I wouldn't mind. But there are some patriotic things that really irritate me. One of them is this flag, this whole flag thing. The American flag's red, white, and blue. It's not black and white. It's not blue and white. It's not black and white with a red stripe on it. You know, that really bugs me when people fly an American flag to honor policemen. Why in the world would a blue and white flag honor? Okay. Anyway, so you need to determine whether that is the same way that I would do things, and that's known as consensus. Distinctiveness, the extent to which one particular actor behaves in the same way to different stimuli. So we know, and that's what happens with my wife. Everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. Then she drinks a bottle of wine, and all of a sudden, my personality changes, or at least she attributes something to my negative personality, distinctiveness. And that's why I know that it's the alcohol making her to say that. Because yesterday I was okay, and tomorrow I'm going to be okay. It's just right now that I'm not okay. Right now, while she's drunk, or not drunk, but a little inebriated, all of a sudden there's something wrong with me.
So how do you deal with that? Like, how do you respond when she
It
says
was,
stuff like that?
she was in the military.
Mhm.
And military people drink. And this was something that she did while she was in the military. They drink to forget, they drink to... Anyway, when she, there for a while, she was drinking almost every night. And every night I was a jerk. And I didn't like it. I was ready to go. I was ready to take off. And I told her, you gotta stop doing this. Because I don't mind it, I'm not telling you you can't drink, I'm just telling you your personality changes, and I can't put up with that. So that's what happened. And she slowed down all by herself. It wasn't really me, She was drunk when I told her that, so she just called me all kinds of an asshole, so all flavors of a jerk.
Do you think that your response would be the same if her attitude was different, or that she was different when she was drinking, if she was more loving and more affectionate? Do you think you would mind her?
So is that what you're looking for? Okay, yeah. About 1 out of every 10 times she gets horny, okay?
Uh-huh.
And I'm going, I don't mind that even a little bit. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna vote for that one every time. But it's like I said, it's like 1 out of every 10. So how much crap do I have to put up with in order, to get
Yeah.
lucky every 10th time? And that's one of the reasons why it took me years to decide.
It's the roll of the dice. Huh?
Yeah, I know, and you
Didn't
never
your-
know, I have no idea.
Didn't your
what's-
mom
I'm
drink?
sorry?
Didn't your mom drink?
No,
Oh, okay, that was.
no.
So do you think that that's true, that men tend to date women or marry women that remind them of their mother, that are like their mother?
Probably. Yeah, so what they're looking for is, especially if their mother was a good mother, they're looking for somebody who's going to be a good mother. Sure. So yeah, they will marry somebody that they think will be like their mother. My assumption was that all women were like my mother.
I see.
Boy, was I wrong.
Oh, okay.
Not all women swear, for one thing. My first wife was not a good mother, and she didn't like kids, and I couldn't fathom that. I mean, that was beyond my comprehension. I didn't realize I was going to be the sole caretaker for my children, even when we were together. She didn't want to take care of the kids. As strange as it was, she was not a baby person. She wasn't even a toddler person. And as they got older, she didn't want to have anything at all to do with these guys because they were, and that's when they're the cutest, right? When they're like 2 and 3 and they're saying all kinds of goofy stuff. That's the best time in the whole wide world. They get boring when they get old enough to,
That's true.
yeah, they really do.
My daughter said it, I'm just like, you're boring now. Just kidding.
Go work on your own.
Yeah.
I don't want to take care of you anymore. Yeah, my grandson's 6, he's still okay.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens next year. When he starts ignoring you, when his friends become more important than you, than
Yeah.
you are to him.
My daughter's 2.
I know. Your daughter's at the best age in the whole wide world.
Mm-hmm. She's like starting to talk, so I'm starting to hear her voice now.
Oh.
She said I think she said flower over her first, like, same time saying flower, showing her like little pictures in her coloring book, and she was saying like those words right after me.
It's the
Yeah.
best part of my whole life.
But she's really naughty though.
That's great.
Yeah.
See, that's what kids are supposed to be.
Yeah,
They're
she's
supposed to be loud and naughty.
Yeah.
And that's funny. you, you got to go with that. Don't try to control that.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So we got consensus, we got distinctiveness, we've got consistency. The extent to which the behavior between one actor and one stimulus is the same across time and circumstance. And that's one of the reasons, using the covariation model, why I realized that my wife was acting differently when she was drinking. Internal attribution occurs when consensus is low, behavior is unique to the person, distinctiveness is low, the person displays same behavior with different targets and in different situations, and consistency is high. The person's behavior occurs reliably across occasions, and of course that's exactly what happened with my wife. The consensus was low, the behavior was unique. Normally she liked me, all of a sudden she doesn't. Distinctiveness was low, the person displays same behavior with different targets. Yeah, so. And then the consistency was high. Every time she was drunk, she acted the same way. External attribution occurs when consensus is high, other people behave similarly in the same situation. Distinctiveness is high, the person's behavior is specific to that situation or target, and consistency is high, the person's behavior occurs reliably across occasions. Then you know that it's an external attribution. While information about all three dimensions may not be available, people will still make attributions. I mean, we still figure that this person always acts this way. Most frequently, consistency and distinctiveness are used more than consensus. Of course, we have to be around that person a lot for us to understand what consensus is. But the rest of it, consistency and distinctiveness, is very common. Humans are amazingly adaptive creatures. A small change in a social situation will affect drastically how a person feels and reacts to the social circumstance. The difficulty for the social scientist is gauging which factor is the most important, the individual's internal criteria or the change in the social situation. Thus, people assume that what is presented is legitimate, the perpetual feelings of the actor. And sometimes that's not true. Now, what if I assumed that when my wife got drunk and she started telling me what a horrible person I was, that she would always think that I was a horrible person? Well, I didn't think that, because I was actually got to be around her a lot when she was sober and when she wasn't sober. And most of the time she liked me. It was just when she was drunk that she didn't like me. Now, my second wife, I think I told you about my second wife. She was an alcoholic. I didn't realize she was an alcoholic until she left. She didn't think she could drink and be with me at the same time, and that's why she left. Because her personality changed. And when
Is
she
that
was,
the one that said you're boring, or one that said?
yeah, both of them, both my
Oh,
first.
the one that got beat up by a truck driver?
No, that was the first guy.
Oh.
That was my first wife. My first wife wanted me to hit her, and I wouldn't do it. I'm not a puncher. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't. It never even occurred to me to hit my wife.
Did you meet all of these women in the military?
No, my first wife was my high school sweetheart. Oh, isn't that sweet? Not really. I should have read her family a little bit better. She had an aunt that had 4 kids and then just picked up and left with a painter one day. This guy was painting her house, and they just took off together. And so they're running across country. They're escaping across country. And they would like check into a motel and then leave before they paid the bill. Or they would stop at a restaurant and order a really big meal. and they would eat it, and then one of them would go to the bathroom and sneak out the door, and then the other one would, yeah.
That's crazy.
Well, they just did this all across.
This is your ex-wife's aunt?
This is her aunt, and she just thought she was the smartest thing in the whole wide world because, you know, they were getting all this free stuff all the way across the country. And so they've got cops chasing them all across the country. I think they lived in Idaho, and anyway, they came back to Indiana, which is where she was originally from, the aunt was. I guess they all thought it was cool, but she abandoned her 4 children, and then my first wife was one of 4 children, and all 4 of those daughters abandoned their children at some point during their lives. They all abandoned their children.
Were they abandoned as well?
No, my goodness, no. They lived with their mom and dad, but the mother didn't like the father. She complained about him constantly. I mean, she complained about him to anybody that would listen. She was a checker at a grocery store. She would tell everybody what an asshole her husband was. So eventually he found somebody that actually liked him and ran off with her. Okay. But this was after everybody was a teenager. So we assume that what is presented is the legitimate and perpetual feelings of the actor. This is known as the fundamental attribution error. It's like first impressions. We see something and we assume that that's the way that they are. Like all those Belladonna in Las Vegas. In Las Vegas. Potentially, you know, you catch them in the store and they act completely different. They're not racist and they're not so patriotic. They're ready to beat you to death with their MAGA hat, make America great again. It's a Trump hat. Okay, anyway. This is a fundamental attribution error, the assumption that this is the way that you will always act. When Sylvia plays paintball, she becomes quite aggressive. Tobin had only seen her at the paintball field, so when he saw her at the grocery store with her school friends, he greeted her very loudly and called her Mad Dog, because that's what they called her at the paintball place. The friends had never seen her playing paintball, so they teased the shy girl mercilessly. In other words, sometimes she has a different personality. Yeah. Mad Dog.
Isn't that like same as dissociative identity disorder?
No. You can change your personality. I mean, you can have different personalities in different places. We all do. You have a different personality at home than you do in the classroom. You probably have a different personality if you were out with your husband at a special event. When you're shooting, when you're at an archery contest, I'm sure that your personality is not the same as it is right here in the classroom.
It's kind of the same.
You have to relax. Whatever. Okay. But potentially it's not the same. The male ego seems to use a fundamental attribution error often to maintain its ego. Peter Ditto set up an experiment where men met a woman, and then the woman rated the men on her impression of them. The men guessed whether the women liked them or not. Okay, so this is a woman that just interacts with the men. She always interacted the same with all the men. Okay. Now, when they were told that her negative criticism was part of the experiment, they discounted what she said. Okay, so she was just being negative because of part of the experiment. She really liked me. That's what they all assumed. But when they were told that her positive comments were part of the experiment, they didn't believe it. They still thought that she was attracted to them. All the men thought that she was attracted to them. Now, why in the world would men think that somebody is attracted to them? Why? What was it about that woman that made them think that she was attracted to them?
Probably she talked with them and listened,
Exactly.
interested.
Exactly. All she had to do was make eye contact with them. All she had to do was talk to them, and they assumed that she was attracted to them. Now you can, if you've ever, have either of you guys ever been to Hooters?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
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 Okay. Hooters is really kind of interesting because that lady will get down in your face, right here. And she gets down on her haunches.
You been there?
Who does, yeah. Isn't that the way it works? But not you. It's your husband that she gets
Yeah.
right down in his face,
Well,
right?
unless she wants to get punched out, she better back up.
The idea is that's the whole way that they get big tips, is by not flirting. She's not really flirting. She doesn't say anything.
Just flashing.
She's not even flashing. All she's doing is making eye contact with him. All she's doing is getting at the same level as him.
Oh.
Because normally she's standing up here, right? You're sitting down, she's standing here.
Where she goes down.
But
Their wings touch.
she's getting down into that individual's face, and potentially he thinks that she's attracted to him. And so he's going to give her a bigger tip because she's paying special attention to him.
I'm gonna do
She's-
that. Just kidding.
When you cook dinner.
Men are easily deluded. Men think that all women are attracted to them.
Can I get a haircut? Just kidding. You know, right? Can you paper my nails? Oh my god, I don't know. This is too funny.
Even when we know different, we assume that other people are the way that they act.
And women know this.
Of course they
not
do.
me, but
Yeah.
yeah, not
Sure.
me.
Sure. You know, if somebody wants to give me bad news, then they'll probably pay attention to. If it's a female, she'll probably pay a lot of attention to me. She'll listen to what I say. She'll compliment me to get things from me. Women do it all the time. Are men so stupid that they think that all women are attracted to them? Yeah, men are that stupid. I'm sorry.
Free lunch day then. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. No.
And this is part of the fundamental attribution error, of course.
Wow.
Do you think it's that way for women too?
Like men.
The question is, yeah, women have to be careful. You
Could
guys-
that be considered like for a woman or even men like just being conceited? Is that?
Well, you probably remember women in high school or females in high school who, like the head cheerleader, who paid a lot of attention to them. And then they got things because they paid attention to them. But they didn't have to do anything. They did, but they didn't have to. Because all they needed to do was pay attention to males in order to get the males to react to that.
So is that an example like for a female?
Sure.
What you were just talking
Oh,
about?
yeah. Yeah, an attractive female will, she'll get men to give her everything, anything, just almost for,
Do you see that on campus?
I don't notice it, but I imagine it happens. Yeah, I would guess it.
So it happens unconsciously?
I don't think it's well, maybe it is
Because it
unconscious.
just happens and you don't.
Here's the situation. I used to be really not so much touchy, but you know how last week you were talking about like how you're very like touchy and stuff. So I was with a group of women. I forget what we were doing, but there was a group of guys that were there too, and I'm just naturally, like, well, now since this was brought to my attention, I'm more aware of it now. But I was like, oh hey, how are you? And touching them on the back, like
Right.
just, and I got the feedback later on that I was being very flirtatious, and I
Okay.
was like, that's not
By the men or by
the women.
the women, of course. the
And
women.
I was like,
Because you were friendlier to them.
yeah, and I was like, that wasn't even,
Your whole intention.
yeah,
But the other thing is, you're from Utah.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
you live in Utah, where in order to get along with people,
They're just more friendly. Okay. Moving here, there's things that I have learned. Number one, you don't really be overly friendly with somebody else's husband.
right?
Growing up in Utah, it's just, people just seem to be more courteous, I guess, more polite, and I had to grow thick skin out here really fast.
Yeah, it was different. What?
So,
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's just, like I said, that was just one example of, this was probably just pertaining to last week, but that came to mind when you were talking about how, you're
Sure.
just very,
Right.
so now I noticed that since that was brought to my attention, I'm just more like, okay.
Well, here's the other question. This is an interesting question. So, were you raised around white people, or were you raised around other Navajos?
I was raised around white people.
Okay. And so, white people, totally different culture.
Mhm.
White people are different than Navajos.
Mhm.
Okay. Navajos live way far away from each other. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now a whole lot of smiling here. Okay. No offense. No offense. Okay. But, I mean, in order to get along in that culture, which is almost a yellow-headed culture, right? I mean, okay. A lot of yellowheads. So you were different. So in order for you to get along with people, you had to be a little bit more outgoing, a little bit more friendly.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So see, now that's
Yeah.
part of your personality now. This is how you get along with people, is that you're a little bit friendlier, you're a little bit more outgoing. You're a little bit more touchy-feely because that's the way they are up there, and that's what you learned up there. In order to get along with people, especially yellowheads, you have to you have to pay attention to them, and then they will accept you. The reality is that you're native, and the reality is you have black hair. So when you're around those people, they see you as different. So in order for you to be acceptable in that culture, you have to be a little bit more outgoing. You have to be a little bit more touchy-feely, because you've already got a strike against you. You're not them. Okay. See what I'm saying?
I think I'm in the same boat as you, because I grew up in the city, like Flagstaff, Holbrook, that's my old town.
Sure.
And I grew up with Filaganas, and I played sports with them, cheerleading with them.
Sure.
Basically the only Navajo that was with them. And I can, relate to that, where other Navajo ladies that I work with, they're just like, they cast me out, and I have to work a little bit harder to just fit in and do things right or be applauded, but they don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, they just have to be family to a certain location on the reservation.
Isn't it curious that the two of you are the ones in this class? If we had women who were just from Hukachuka and they had never been anyplace else, I wonder what they would be saying right now.
Well, I just know that Holbrook, if you want education, you'll be here. I guess it's how we're raised, in a society of Bilaganas, people who are kind of upper level.
Right.
Like, they teach you that, if you want to go to school, then you're going to go to school.
Right.
Yeah.
But if somebody were just from here, had never been off the reservation, had never experienced the rejection that you would have experienced had you not been a little bit more outgoing, I don't know that they could even acknowledge what you had to go through in order to be accepted. Both of you. I mean, both of you were in
That's
the
all
same
crazy
situation.
though, how some ladies here, they do that, you're just being friendly, and they
Right.
just come at you why are you flirting, with your mentee, me as a peer mentor, why are you flirting with I'm not even flirting with my mentee, I'm just trying to help
Right.
this individual to succeed in their academic goals.
Right.
Why don't you do that as well, instead of just thinking about yourself?
Right.
Oh, but
Isn't it fascinating? I
Yeah.
mean, both of you were in social situations that were very difficult, and in order to be accepted, you had to be a little bit more outgoing. And now that you're in a more closed society, you're not aggressive behavior, well, it is kind of aggressive behavior, is seen as a negative. And of course, it's the only way you could have survived in that environment that you were in before, with the Belladonna world. Totally different. I know if they were sitting in the back, nobody'd be saying anything. They'd all be, oh, what the hell's wrong with that lady? She must be really flirtatious.
She must really want that grade.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I don't know, since moving out here, you know, it's,
It can be easy.
I don't know, I noticed that I'm a little bit more closed off, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how people will take things, you know,
Right.
certain things I just, like we had talked about, you know, I don't want to, I guess, step on anybody's toes because of my point of view
Right.
and what I went through.
Right.
And it's just, you know, a lot of the people that live here, this is just all they know, and it's
Right.
not really their fault. You know, this is
Right.
where they're from.
Right.
So,
Right.
a lot of the times, you know, like I said, just since moving here,
Right.
I've learned a lot about, you know, just how it is.
I was really lonely when I first got here.
Yeah.
I was really, really lonely. And there were a couple people that reached out to me, but they weren't people from here. They were people from other tribes.
You know, and it's like,
Which was
Scott.
weird because I had Navajo
Yeah.
friends up north that were really, really good friends. And why were they good friends? Because they were in an environment that was alien to them.
Yeah.
And they were looking for somebody else who had experienced the same rejection that they had. I know, this is weird. This is just really weird. I thought I was going to come down here because these guys were, I mean, they were really, really good friends of mine. And they were Navajo. But I came down here and nobody is like that.
I just realized that all the people I associate with, like I get along very easily, are
Mhm.
people that don't come from this area.
Exactly.
It's more of like the border
Exactly.
of the reservation, like how I am.
Right.
I'm just thinking about it.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
You're going to get along with people that act like you, that accept you for the way that you act.
Yeah.
So you're going to get along with people that have lived in the city or people that have lived in different environments. In an environment where they had to be a little bit more outgoing in order to survive. And both of you were in that kind of a situation. But of course, that's seen as negative here because people don't act that way, as confusing as it is. I was thinking about that the other day. I saw my friend in the weight room. You know, everybody's ignoring me in the weight room, and he comes up and, you know, he does we do the whole handshaking thing. And you know, afterwards everybody looks at me a little bit differently because I've got a friend who's actually native. I'm not just a white guy stealing their weights or whatever. Oh, it's weird. You know, I'll go in there and I'll start lifting and people will take my stuff. You know, I'll be using a bench and then they'll just take it. And I'll be using one of the machines and I've done 2 sets out of 3 and they'll just take it and they'll park there. And you know, they camp it at certain places. You can't get back to that.
and what do you do? Are
No,
you just
I
passive?
go find another bench. I go find another weight. The other day I don't lift very much. I was only lifting 30-pound dumbbells, but this guy saw me lifting the 30, and he was lifting 50-pound dumbbells. And all of a sudden he drops down to 30, and he parks on those things, and he takes those dumbbells and he puts them right beside him so that I'm not going to go out and steal them from him. That's not the way it works. It was just really, really strange. But then after they saw me shake hands with this guy and have a conversation, short conversation, they acted differently toward me. They started accepting me a little bit more, I guess. It's a sad,
This
sad
is
world, isn't
another
it?
eye opener again.
No, this isn't right.
We go
Why don't
home
we
and
stop right here? We'll pick this up next time.
process.
Like I learned about epigenetics and now this today. I'm like,
Yeah, you guys are gonna make me